During this time between the Holy Father's death or resignation and when they actually enter into the conclave, which is a special word for when they gather to actually carry out the voting. Those other days in between, the cardinals meet each day. They do several things. First of all, they pray. Secondly, it is mandated that there are 2 spiritual talks. One has already happened by a priest, Candelamesa, a Capuchin friar, who already gave his talk. And then, so there's prayer, there's the talk, and there's also conversation as the various cardinals ask to say a few words. It's supposed to be 5 minutes, but I guess they're allowing some to talk a little longer. And they're sharing with one another. 51 of them have already talked. They are sharing with the other cardinals who are present some of their desires, some of their vision for the future. What are major problems? What are challenges? What kind of a pope are we looking for? Are we looking for a theologian? Are we looking for an administrator? Are we looking for an evangelizer? Are we looking for a holy man, a mystic? And they're sharing their thoughts as they're trying to get to know one another. That's a big issue when you have 115 voters. Granted, 1/4 of them are in Europe. However, the rest are around the world, and while there are some opportunities to get to know one another, it's not on a weekly basis. It might be once a year you're in Rome together for 2 days or whatever. So this particular time is very, very significant so that the voting is kind of informed, having an idea of where some of the people are coming from and what their vision is and all of that. Also, there's some business that has to be done. Rome is set up with different offices. If you think of the cabinet of the President of the United States, well, we don't have all the ones that he does, but he doesn't have the ones that we have either. So, we each, have a separate group because we're doing very different things. But the point is, first and foremost, the cabinet, the cardinals in charge of all of those different congregations, their work ceases. They're done. They're not allowed to go to the office. They're finished. The archbishop's secretaries, likewise, their work is done. Only lower officials are still left. And they're processing normal stuff, ordinary matter, and they're able to carry that on as the Pope, through the documents, have given them that faculty. But the cardinals and the archbishops are no longer part of it, except, first of all, one of them carries a title, the Camerlengo. Right now, it's Cardinal Bertone. And Bertone is in charge of the resources of the church to make sure, for example, when the Pope died, that his apartment was sealed off because nobody can go in until a new Pope is elected. And he has other responsibilities to maintain the integrity of the Holy See. Another person is the cardinal in charge of the sacred penitentiary. The sacred penitentiary handles things of a very confidential matter regarding a person's relationship with God. And it just shows the church's concern is that things that pertain to a person's relationship with God It's spiritual, and therefore we don't deprive them of the peace of soul and heart. For example, something that has to do with an action that they did that may carry a penalty in the church. You don't let a person suffer under that penalty, and therefore the major penitentiary is still able to function in his work. Another person who has been granted that he continues to work is the almoner. The almoner is the one who distributes charity money to worthy causes. Interesting. What the church is, wants to maintain. They want certain things to continue, reaching out to people in need. If there was a terrible disaster somewhere, so that the Holy See could make a contribution. Even though things are going on in Rome, when it's those who are in need, you don't forget them. You don't forget those who have spiritual needs because of something they have done or whatever, that you can release them from that particular sin. There are such things as reserved sins and all that, and that's the major penitentiary. Also, if work comes in that is not ordinary, but it would be wise and prudent for the church to do it, the people from that office can bring it to the cardinals, not one cardinal, to the cardinals, and they decide. Now, it can't be anything new, but if it's a serious matter that could bring scandal to the church, that could be harmful, then they do allow for that. So there are some things that go on, but certainly the focus with prayer, these talks, and the time that they're spending together, the focus is on getting ready for the election. The election begins when the cardinals determine when it begins. That was one of the things that Benedict said. You decide when you want it, but it has to be within 20 days of the beginning. It has to be within 20 days. And so what they're waiting for are these last two cardinal electors to come, and when they come, then that will be one of the things on their agenda. When should we begin? The conclave is still held in the Sistine Chapel, and the Sistine Chapel now has been taken off limits for any tourists or that. A good part of the museum, in fact, has been shut off because it's within that area, and the workmen are already getting it ready for the conclave, which would be 115 cardinals. And that is the process whereby, beginning with that second talk. Remember I said that there were two talks, and one of them is at the beginning of the conclave, a spiritual talk to all the cardinals before they begin the actual election. One of the things that has been battered back and forth is how many votes do you have to have? And that gets a little bit confusing in that it's all, it's been 2/3, but 2/3, there's different ways you get to 2/3. You're probably saying, well, one of the things that they don't want is that, that there were 33 voters, for example. I like simple numbers. I can figure it out. And so 2/3 of 33 is 22. Well, if 22 people vote for Joe Smith, well, maybe Joe Smith voted for himself. Well, they don't want that. Or they haven't at certain times. So then it went to 2/3 plus 1. So that even if Joe did vote for himself, then he, so it gets a bit, they're trying to maintain as much integrity as they can over all of this time. And so, I think that about brings, in fact, I've overtalked, but we'll stop now. There were many sections, and believe me, in getting ready for this, I read several things that would be maybe 150 pages, so I spared you a lot. But at least it gives you a flavor of what is happening, and I hope it did. And that, the important thing is that there's going to be an election of a pope. The only way you get an election of the pope is the prior pope either died or resigned. Nothing else gets you to there. Now, the reason I'm pausing is because, there could be other circumstances. Just imagine for a moment that the Holy Father has a massive stroke. The law doesn't cover it. All it says is resignation. You have to be compos mentis, or you died. So, as we go forward, I wouldn't be surprised that we see some other things in the future to cover other possibilities. So, it's pretty strict. Those are the only two things that lead to an election. Either you die, the Pope dies, or he resigns. There's no other way to get there.